The New Year's is upon us, everyone. Shall we dive in to read some more scary stories in a term to start the new year? Number 1. So, I had a very strange thing occur late in the evening, or early in the morning if you prefer, on New Year's Eve. I had been out at a party drinking and smoking a bit, as it is customary. At around 2:30, a few friends, I'll use nicknames for them, Mads, Thaw, and Max, and I left the party we were at and headed back to our town. We had kept a roach of a blunt from the party, and we had decided to pull into the residence parking lot outside the condo complex I live in to finish it off. Not 2 minutes after we spark it, a man comes stumbling up the road that runs through the parking area. This road, for reference's sake, runs through the parking area and down a hill a few houses. I know pretty much all the people who live down that small hill. The man didn't really perturb me or my friends, so we kept smoking. Then, a minute later, a high school girl wearing no shoes or socks and just a short, skimpy dress comes walking up the hill. At this point, I was starting to wonder what kind of weird party was going on at one of my neighbors' houses. The girl walked through the parking area without a word, and then turned onto the main street and headed up it. At first, we assumed we wouldn't bother worrying because, despite her lack of shoes, she was walking straight and seemed to keep going by herself. That's when things got strange. After she had disappeared from sight up the street, she came back bolting down as fast as she could, given her shoeless situation. When she reached my friends and I, she slowed down, but looked very spooked. Mads asked her what had happened, and she stepped away from her at first. Then, with horror-stricken eyes, she pointed up to the main street. We all turned and looked, but there was nothing in our direct line of sight. Max and I decided we could go up the street to investigate what was scaring this girl so much. We made sure Thaw, Maz, and the girl got in Thaw's car, as she was the designated driver of the evening, and lock it. Max and I went up the main street for 5 minutes and we saw nothing. Then we passed under the one street light on the upper portion of the street. This street had a stubborn and nerve-wracking tendency to turn off at night once you pass under it. To my dismay, it turned off, leaving us in total darkness, save for the faint glow of a light at the end of someone's driveway. This light was very low to the ground. That's when we saw it. Something that looked like a naked person, but wasn't quite human, waddled down the street towards us. It moved, as though it were half squatting, and because of this, its hands dragged along the ground as they hung limp at its sides. I couldn't make out its face, and Max told me later that he couldn't either. It was also making a throaty, gurgling noise, as if it were almost choking on something. All we could do in the moment was turn and run, as fast as we could down the street. I ran right into my house, and Max ran to Thaw's car. I could hear the car screeching out of the parking area. I locked the door, and I didn't even bother to look outside to see if the thing was still coming down the street. Number 2. 25 minutes, and I have to go. An odd amount of time, I know, but it's honestly all I have before I have to head out and get as far away as I can. I fucked up. No, that's an understatement. It started at work this morning. I work for a company that develops app games. They started recently, about 3 months ago. A buddy of mine, Jimmy, was recruited by one of the owners, and he heard about an easy job that would allow me to make double of what I make in sales. I'm not one of the developers, designers, or even an intern. I'm the janitor, but they still paid me well. My wife, Danny, was a little disappointed when she heard I would clean for a living, but her mood changed for the better as soon as I told her I would be making a little over $4,500 a month. The job was easy. I would come into work at around 8 in the morning, and by 2 in the afternoon, I'd be done. It's amazing how much closer I have gotten with my family because of this job. When I worked in sales, I would work 13-hour shifts, and I pretty much missed the first 2 years of my son's life. Now, with my new lighter work schedule, I have been able to get closer to Danny, and my son, Ryan, has become attached to me whenever I went. Hell, my boss even lets me bring my son to work on some days. He had fun hanging out with Jimmy, and playing a couple of the games Jimmy was working on. Life was good, up until today. It started off like any other day. I woke up, took a shower, ate a light breakfast, and got to work at 7:45. Around 2:30, I was finishing up when I saw Jimmy standing behind me. He was swaying a bit, like he had a little too much to drink before coming into work. With a chuckle, I asked him if he was feeling alright. He shook his head slowly and asked, "Where's Ryan? I haven't seen him in a long time, and I have a new game I thought he would like to play." Thrown off a bit, I nervously replied, "Shit, Jimmy? He was with me the other day. You sure you're alright, man? Didn't get enough sleep last night?" He just stared at me for a couple of seconds before getting on his knees. He stretched his arms out dramatically before latching onto my legs and pleading, "Don't fucking go home. Don't leave work. Please, promise me, dude, don't fucking leave." I shook him off and quietly muttered, "I gotta finish cleaning these floors. We'll talk later." I left around 3:20, and I managed to avoid Jimmy while I was leaving. I did manage to get a quick look at him without noticing. He was softly banging his head against the desk. His lips were moving, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. I started to walk out the door when I heard a blood-curdling scream. By the time I managed to turn back around towards Jimmy, I saw him lying on the ground. He was stabbing himself repeatedly in the midsection. Bits of intestines started to leak out of the bigger gashes. A couple of guys tried to run up to him, but before anyone could stop him, he let out a loud sob and started to rip the insides of his body out. I don't know why, but I ran out to my car as quickly as I could and drove back home. I should have listened to his warning, but I refused to believe that my family was in any type of dangerous situation. I ran into the house to find that no one was home. I called out Danny's name, but I was only met with silence. My phone started to vibrate. Without looking at who was calling, my finger accepted the call and I heard a muffled voice in the background. I knew it was Danny. Before I could say anything, a gruff voice on the other end asked, "Why didn't you listen to Jimmy? If you just stayed at work, I wouldn't have had to do any of this. Since you were the first to leave, you will be our second experiment. It's for a new game. We want to make it as immersive as possible. So we figured, hell, using real people in real situations will probably give us the best insight. Are you..." I cut him off and begged him to let me have my family back. I told him to take me instead, but he just laughed before saying, "No, you already know that's not going to happen. Get ready, get into your closet. You will see a backpack with plenty of resources. Of course, the more accomplishments you achieve, the better the prizes you get. Don't fail, or all three of you will die. You have 3 hours to get ready. Once the 3 hours is up, we will send you another call. Get in your car and drive as far away from home as you can. That way, the chances of you getting caught are less." I tried asking him why I would need to be concerned about getting caught, but he hung up. The last thing I heard before he hung up was Ryan asking where I was. That's why I only have 25 minutes. I spent an hour running through the house trying to find everything that could help me with whatever the fuck I needed to do. The next hour was spent going to the bank and taking out all the money in my account. $324. I suck at saving money. 35 minutes was getting the bag out of the closet and getting everything in my car. The bag was pretty much shit. There was $8, 2 granola bars with the word health written on it, and 3 bottles of water. Alright, I just got the warning call. Time for me to go. It's a new year. I guess I don't really have a choice. Time for a new me. Number 3. I am not fat, not even a little. Actually, I'm pretty underweight for my height. which is a constant battle with my primary physician who worries about eating disorders, despite the fact that I most certainly do not have one. No, not fat. But there is a word for what I am. They call it skinny fat. Okay, so what's skinny fat? Well, it's when somebody is skinny, like me, but doesn't gain weight, no matter how terribly they eat. But, in return, they are wildly unhealthy because they eat so poorly. That's where I was sitting at the beginning of the year. I'm not stupid. I know that my lifestyle and habits are unhealthy. I don't exercise. I eat like shit. And, in turn, I'm always sick. I'm always having stomach problems and feeling faint and dizzy. Physically, my life is kind of a nightmare, and I have no one to blame but myself. So this year, like many other people, I decided things would be different. I was going to get healthy, goddammit. I was going to work out. I was going to eat right, and hopefully, I'd see an improvement in my health. So, I did what any other poor sucker does when their life is a mess and they have no idea how to fix it. I made it my New Year's resolution. I was in luck, because a new gym had just opened up in my neighborhood, and they were giving out discounted memberships for the first 100 members or so. Of course, I signed up immediately. This is perfect, I said to myself. If I'm spending money on a gym membership, it means that I'll definitely go. As if that's ever worked for anyone. I went to their website to sign up, and as I was perusing their options, I saw something interesting. Personal trainers. You know, I'd never given much thought to a personal trainer before. I just assumed I wouldn't need one. It's not like I was going to be training for the Olympics or anything. I didn't need to get super buff. I just wanted to feel better. But it was an ad for their trainers that caught my eye. It read, "Not sure where to start. Get tips and tools for beginners from our specially trained personal trainers." Well, that definitely applied to me. Now that I was thinking about it, I really didn't know where to start. What was I going to be doing anyways? Cardio? Weightlifting? I didn't know how much I should be doing or how fast or anything like that. As for eating healthy, I had no idea how I was going to tackle that colossal problem. Hey, maybe a trainer could help. And the best part was that the gym website guaranteed the first month would be free. Well, in that case, there's nothing to lose, I thought as I signed myself up for a trainer named George. I wasn't really sure what I was getting myself into when I walked into the gym on January 1st. To be honest, I was already feeling kinda defeated. After all, most people never keep their New Year's resolution. Actually, I myself rarely keep them. Wasn't this all just an exercise in futility? Maybe I should just go home and give up before I embarrass myself. But no, I decided. I was gonna try it, at least for the first day. I had to. First, I had to sign in at the front desk. The receptionist was a woman who was skinny, like I was, but had some definite musculature, and she looked so happy, and my heart ached because I wanted to be like that. "First time in the gym?" she asked, as she was rummaging through her drawer, looking for a card for me. Yeah, I admitted, feeling a little foolish. "Don't worry," she beamed at me, handing me a gym membership card. "I used to be just like you, actually, but then I started working out with this gym company, and believe me, everything got so much better for me. You're working with a trainer, right? Which one?" "Someone named George." "Oh, I worked with George. You're in for a real treat. He's amazing and he won't let you quit." She smiled even wider, if that were possible, and waved me through the doors. That made me feel a lot better, and walked into the gym with a little more confidence, feeling as though, yes, I could actually do this. That feeling flew out the window when I saw George. The man was huge. I mean, really fucking huge. His muscles bulged out like balloons, but they looked about as hard as steel. He was bald and had hard eyes, despite their light blue color. Overall, he looked incredibly severe and intimidating. I was fairly certain that he could crush me with just 2 of his fingers. Great, I thought to myself in misery. He's gonna take one look at me and laugh how pathetic I am. Instead, he smiled at me, and it transformed him from a murderous-looking muscle monster to a friendly, almost sweet hulk of a man. "You must be Monica," he beamed at me. "I've been waiting for you." "You seem pretty nervous. First time, right? Here, let me walk you through what we'll be doing together." And he did. We spent an hour together just going through a game plan to get me started towards my goal. But by the time that hour was up, we'd become friends. At least, I felt we had. He was easygoing and fun to talk to. We joked together best of all, and he didn't make me feel like a failure for my state of total physical disrepair. Best of all, he didn't make me feel like a failure for my state of total physical disrepair. "It happens," he shrugged, when I mentioned how ashamed I was. "Physical fitness doesn't come as easy as some as it does to others. That's why there are people like me, to help people like you out." He winked at me and I laughed. "Here's the plan we came up with," as he described it to me. "Basically, you need to focus on your weight and your heart health," he said. "So we're going to start on cardio with a touch of weightlifting to get you some muscle mass. In order for this to work, however, you need to start paying attention to what you're eating." He must have seen my face when he said that. He laughed and was quick to reassure me. "It's not that bad. Your problem is you start out with your goals that you can't possibly reach. Let's face it, you're not going to switch over to an all-vegetarian, super healthy diet overnight. Let's take it one step at a time. For now, I want you to cut out the soda and fast food. In addition, I want you to drink this." He handed me a bottle and I read the label. "Weight On, the one-step weight gain formula, a Salmon Company product." I recognized Salmon. It was the name of the gym. "You guys have your own protein shakes?" "Actually, we have a variety of formulas to suit a variety of needs," he explained. "This one has a high caloric content that should help you gain a little weight. We have other products for people who are overweight or are managing medical problems like diabetes. They're very important to our programs, I promise you. If you drink this twice a day, you'll start seeing results and it'll be worth it. Give it a week and you'll be very, very pleased." "Alright, how much will it cost?" I asked because, let's face it, I wasn't made of money and this sounded a hell of a lot like a scam to take more money. "Absolutely free. Comes with the trainer program," he answered. Well, that settled it. The rest of that day's session was spent with George introducing me to all the equipment and facilities in the gym. When the session came to an end, he handed me a box of the formula. 14 bottles, enough to last me a week. I promised him I'd give it a try and come in every day at 3 to start working out. I left feeling lighter than I had in weeks, and as I walked out, the woman at the desk smiled at me and said, "Gee, you look as though you're walking on the moon." I grinned. "Maybe I am." I was wary about the formulas at first. It seemed almost like cheating, you know, or like a scam. I know the results only come from hard work, so anything that makes it easier is wrong, somehow. But I promised I'd try it, so I did. I drank my first shake that day. I was ready to hold my nose and down it at once, struggling to keep it down because I know how those things usually taste, like sweaty ass. It was delicious. It was chocolate, my favorite, and kind of tasted like an ice cream shake. I drank it all in one go. I noticed a change immediately. Suddenly, I was ravenously hungry. After my stop at the gym, I bought a bunch of health foods, fruits, vegetables, the whole 9 yards. I sat down and ate almost everything I bought that day. It was like I couldn't get enough. I was hungrier than I'd ever been in my life. I was almost worried that I would get sick from the eating. My stomach has always been sensitive, but it didn't, in fact. My stomach felt better than it had in years, in my whole life, actually. I was thrilled. By the time I went into work the next day, I was already looking better. My skin wasn't so deadly pale, and my hair wasn't shedding as much as it usually does. I didn't feel faint or queasy. I felt great. And George noticed, "See, what did I tell you?" He said, "Those shakes are like miracles. They'd give your body what they've been missing." That day, the 2nd of January, was my first real day of working out. Before the shakes, I'd been dreading it, but seeing how great I felt, I couldn't wait to get started. It definitely wasn't easy, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. I usually don't feel anything from exercise other than the pain and exhaustion, but this time it was exhilarating. I found it extremely rewarding to push myself to see how far I could go. My endorphins climbing higher and higher as George cheered me on. I was able to run for a full half hour, when I'd only been able to do about 15 minutes in the past. I did squats and cleans, and worked for a good half hour with the dumbbells. The more I worked, the stronger I felt. I loved it. The working out went great over the rest of the week. I was feeling healthier. I was eating healthier. I was gaining muscle mass, and was no longer underweight. I was improving so quickly it made my head spin. I was overjoyed. It was the other stuff that wasn't so good. It started with dreams. They weren't that bad, I guess. Just strange. In them, I was a warrior. I was strong and tall and powerful. It was the power that was so intoxicating. At least as the beginning of the dreams, but then I'd start to feel as though I'm losing control. My muscles would grow and grow and grow until they were too big. Eventually they would burst and I would explode in a hailstorm of viscera. If it were just the dreams, it wouldn't have bothered me so much, but it didn't stop there. The next thing I noticed had to do with my fingernails. They grew. I mean, okay, fingernails are supposed to do that, but they aren't supposed to grow so fast. I'd clip them in the morning, and by the afternoon I'd have a full inch extending beyond the flesh of my fingers. My hair followed suit. It went from my shoulders to the middle of my back in one afternoon. Weird, but I wasn't ready to admit something was wrong. My life was better than it ever had been, oddities or not. I was beginning to rethink my convictions by the time of the 7th of January. The end of the first week rolled around. Everything was growing. My teeth were the most troublesome. I couldn't even shut my mouth all the way because they were so long and pointy. I was starting to feel like a vampire or werewolf or something. My eyelashes had grown out and I actually had to trim them. Weird, I know. My fingernails and toes were growing longer. I was sure I was taller. Muscle mass wasn't the only thing I was gaining from these formulas. I decided to ask George at the day's session. I got to the gym early, hoping that he'd have a little time to talk before we started our session. They must not have been expecting me because no one was at the front desk to check my gym membership. With a shrug, I signed my name on the sign-in sheet and headed for the girls' locker room. No one was around at all. Maybe they weren't even open yet. But everything was unlocked. Well, whatever. It didn't really bother me. Until this. I saw a hole in the floor. I got closer and realized that there was a door in the floor, with a ladder leaning down underneath the locker rooms. I tried to shrug it off, thinking that it probably just led to some electrical shit. It nagged and nagged and nagged until it got the better of me, and I decided to check it out. I set my bag on the floor next to the door and climbed down the ladder, relishing how easy it was for me since I'd been working out. I almost forgot the whole reason I was going down until I reached the floor. The next part is going to be hard. Hard for me to write, and hard for you to understand. But please try. I need someone to understand it for me, because fuck, I can't do it. I was standing at the end of a long tunnel, a tunnel lined with cages. They were heavy-duty cages too, with huge padlocks and steel. The things inside them. I think at one point they were human. Actually, I'm certain of it. But they couldn't be said to resemble humans anymore, at least not as we know them. I'll start with the first one. The first I saw was to my right. Judging by the amount of hair, I'd said it had been once a girl. But who knows? Now she was skin. It looked as though her skin had just grown and grown and grown. It was piled on the floor now, a massive pile at least 10 feet across and 6 feet high. And from the inside, I heard a low groaning, as though someone was being crushed under the weight. I looked to my left. This one had definitely been a man at one point. He was stretched out, his neck and limbs and torso too long to function. The worst was his head, however. It, too, had been stretched, so that his eyes swam around in sockets that were now too wide, and his jaw hung open, dislocated from the elongation of his skull. After those two, the creatures became a blur. I ran down the tunnel, my eyes scanning all the horrors underneath the gym. Some had huge internal organs that had burst through the torso and were no longer so internal. Some had giant eyes pooling out of their head, twitching on the ground, staring up at me. Some were still alive. Most were already dead. I was probably only down there for 2 minutes, but that was enough. I scrambled out the tunnel and I ran out of the gym, grabbed my bag on the way out so they wouldn't know I'd been there. I got into my car and sped home, without so much as a thought as to what I was supposed to do. Later, I thought about going back and trying to save them, but looking at them had already told me the truth. They were beyond saving. I half expected the gym to have disappeared by the next day, as though it had been a bad dream or something. But it's still there, the website is still up, and George has been calling me, asking where I am. I never answer my phone anymore. Another week's worth of formula arrived at my doorstep yesterday. I drained them all down the sink and threw them away. I was almost disappointed, but thinking back to those things down in the tunnel, I think I'd rather work out in the old-fashioned way and then end up like them. Well, I'd rather work out the old-fashioned way than end up like them. Getting rid of them wasn't easy, but I consoled myself by deciding they almost certainly weren't FDA approved. I'd been waiting for someone to come after me. I thought I had gotten out of there without anyone seeing me, only to remember, once I got home, that I signed in. They knew I'd been there. They probably knew what I'd seen. I was too afraid to leave my room. So, anyway, if you want the Reader's Digest version, I missed going to the gym these last few days and have broke my resolution. I would like to point out that it's not entirely my fault. So, does anyone know a good gym that won't try to kill me? Number 4. 2018 has been the worst year of my life. I found out my girlfriend of 2 years has been cheating on me. I was fired from my job. My dog was kidnapped. My best friend died in a car crash. Worst of all, however, is that this will be the 8th time I've lived through 2018. I'll start from the first time. It was just before midnight on New Year's Eve. I was alone, of course. I'm not a religious person, but after the horrible year I had experienced, I was ready to try anything. I prayed to any god that would listen. I wish that I would have never had to experience another year like 2018. Either the god that listened to me is sadistic, or a demon heard my plea instead. Instead of granting my wish, they are making me live through the worst year of my life over and over. The first time I experienced the time loop, I thought it was truly a gift, and not a curse. I was wrong. I woke up in my bed like any other morning. Nothing seemed different. That was until I made my way to my kitchen. I noticed that the layout of my furniture in the living room was different than it had been that night before. Then my phone began to ring. It was my girlfriend, or rather my ex-girlfriend, I had broken up with after finding out she was sleeping around with her boss. But then why had her name come up as lover, with a heart emoji next to it? I knew I had changed that long ago. I ignored the call. I soon received a text message that said, "Hey baby, call me when you wake up. I wanted to tell you I will be home late tonight. We have to catch up from all that time off during the holidays. Love you." Was she toying with me? We'd been broken up for over 6 months now. I was about to type back an angry response when I noticed the date on the background of my phone. January 1st, 2018. Was this some sort of glitch? Had my phone possibly reverted to an earlier date? There was one way to test it. I called my dead friend Ricky. Ricky had died in a drunk driving accident. He wasn't the one drinking, but it didn't matter. He had gone out by himself one night for a late taco trip, but he would never come home. The phone rang a few times before someone picked up on the other side. Bro, you know how much I drank last night? Why the fuck are you calling me this early? The voice on the other end said. Ricky? I questioned. No, it's Santa Claus. Of course it's me. You're the only one who calls me, he responded. I almost dropped my phone in shock. It was unmistakably his voice and attitude. He was alive again. Was I really in 2018 again? I quickly apologized to him for calling so early, then I hung up the phone. I ran back to my room to see my other best friend lying at the foot of my bed. I had groggily walked past him when I woke up. It was my golden retriever, Apollo. He had been stolen from me the previous year. Someone had broken into my home while I was at work. They took everything of value, including my dog. I basically jumped on him with excitement. He was confused at first, but after a few seconds, he began to play back. This was like a dream come true. I was given the opportunity to fix the worst year of my life, except I wasn't. I marked down the date that each terrible event occurred, determined to reverse fate. First would be fixing my relationship. I became the best boyfriend imaginable. Even Hallmark movies had nothing on me. I began to take my girlfriend on date after date to anywhere she wanted. I surprised her with flowers every chance I got. I loved her with everything I had, but it wasn't enough. No matter how many times I lived through 2018, she always cheats. No matter how hard I try, it never matters. Well, I guess you can't change the person after all. Perhaps this was a sign I was better off without her anyway. No matter how many times I lived through 2018, she always cheats. No matter how hard I try, it never matters. Well, I guess you can't change a person after all. Perhaps this was a sign I was better off without her anyway. So, I moved on to focusing on preventing Apollo from being kidnapped. I upgraded the security in my home. I added cameras, sensors, anything to stop what I knew would happen. I even stayed home the day he went missing to make certain he would stay with me. But once again, it didn't matter. Despite my efforts, my dog gets kidnapped every 2018. If I stay home with him, the original day he went missing, then he disappears the next day. I tried bringing him almost everywhere with me, but the moment I leave for 5 minutes, he's gone. I could still save Ricky though, right? Even if I lost everything, if I could just save Ricky, I could still be a little happy. We had grown up together, and his death stacked upon the rest of my year had driven me to the brink of suicide. I couldn't follow through with it, but it was the closest I'd ever come to death myself. The night Ricky died, he had been alone, so I went to his house that night instead. I brought tacos with me, so there would be no need for a trip out. Ricky lived for about a week. He was once again hit by a drunk driver. Once again, nothing I do ever matters. Every year I try to save Ricky, and every year he dies. The only way I could see him saving is if I tied him up and locked him in my basement, but I don't think I could ever do that. I imagine after this New Year's Eve, I will once again wake up in 2018. I'm writing this in hopes that it somehow makes it to 2019, and maybe someone out there can help me. I just want 2018 to be over. Number 5. Growing up, New Year's Eve was a big holiday for me. My family never really hosted a party or anything, so my New Year's Eve tended to be me just watching TV until the clock struck midnight, and then it was off to bed. This continued into high school. By that point, I was tired of doing nothing on New Year's, but I didn't really have many friends, so there weren't a whole lot of options. It was my senior year of high school when I finally got invited to a New Year's Eve party. The invite came from Jake, one of my teammates on the track team. We talked a lot during practices and stuff, but never had hung out outside of school, which is why I was surprised when he texted me the invite. I tried playing it cool, even though I was really excited to finally be doing something on New Year's. He told me it was just going to be a house party with a lot of kids from our school and a few out-of-towners. I replied saying it sounded good and I'd see him in a few days. New Year's Eve came and Jake picked me up around 9 p.m. There were a few other guys in the car that I recognized but had never actually talked to. We just made small talk on the way to the party, and one of the guys asked me if I was going to try and find a girl at this party to kiss at midnight, and I jokingly said, "We'll see what happens." We eventually arrived at our destination. The first thing I noticed was the party was quite large, with a ton of cars parked in the driveway and along the street. I'd always been an introvert, so being around a ton of people was not really my thing, but I just kept reminding myself this was way better than sitting home and doing nothing. At first, I was pretty uncomfortable being around a huge crowd, but I eventually calmed my nerves and started having some fun. I was dancing along to music with everyone else when I noticed this girl looking at me. Jake eventually noticed it too. "Hey man, that girl keeps looking at you. You should go talk to her," he said. "I don't know, man. She might have been looking at someone else," I said. "Dude, she was definitely looking at you. Just go talk to her. What do you got to lose?" Jake said. "Fine, I will," I said. I started to head over to her, but realized she wasn't there anymore. I turned back toward Jake. "Hey man, that girl is gone. Did you see where she went?" I asked. "No, sorry. I'm sure she'll be back. Probably just went to the bathroom or something," he said. I decided to go grab a drink while I waited for her to come back. 20 minutes passed with no sign of her. Slightly disappointed, I head to another room to get away from the loudness. I checked my phone. It was almost 11. Looks like I won't be getting that New Year's kiss, I laughed to myself. I was about to head back to the party when I noticed someone else had entered the room. I looked up from my phone, and I was surprised to see the girl who I thought was looking at me earlier. "What are y'all doing in here all by yourself?" she asked. "Just needed to get away from the craziness for a bit," I said. "Yeah, I totally understand. Big parties aren't really my thing," she said. "So did you come here by yourself?" she asked. "No, I came here with a friend from school," I said. "Oh, cool. I came here with my friend and her boyfriend, but they've been doing their own thing. My name's Amanda, by the way," she said. For the next 15 minutes, we talked. She told me she was from out of town, an hour away, which is why I'd never seen her around. Eventually, I asked if she wanted to dance, and she said yes. When we started dancing, I checked the time. It read 11:20. Things continued as normal until about 10 minutes till midnight. That's when I noticed Amanda started acting really nervous. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Yeah, I'm fine," she said, but clearly she wasn't. Roughly the next 6 minutes, she kept checking her phone for the time, and she had a nervous look on her face. "If you're worried about the time, I'm sure everyone here will do a countdown to midnight," I said. "I know, but it has to be exact," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Never mind, forget I said anything," she said. I checked my phone. 2 minutes to midnight. At this point, Amanda couldn't even focus. She was looking everywhere but at me. The countdown started. People were shouting all around me, but all I could focus on was Amanda. She looked terrified. "Hey, are you sure you're alright? If you don't want to be here anymore, I won't be offended," I said. I could hear the countdown reach 10. Amanda was now staring intently at the clock on her phone. At this point, the place was going crazy. The next thing that kind of happened was a blur. As soon as the alarm on my phone went off signaling midnight, Amanda went up to me and kissed me. It happened in an instant, and then she started to leave. I moved toward her to say goodbye when I noticed she was crying. "Amanda, are you alright?" I said. I'm sorry," she said with tears in her eyes. "I didn't want to die." She ran through the crowd of people and I lost sight of her. At the time, I couldn't even comprehend what had just happened. I tried looking for her outside, but she was gone. I eventually met up with Jake and got ready to go home. He asked me how my night went, and I just said it was fun, but didn't mention Amanda. The whole situation was freaking me out. The terrified look on her face and what she said. What the hell was she talking about? Did she think I was gonna hurt her or something? And if she did, why would she kiss me? A few weeks went by, and I just tried to forget about the whole situation. I realized I forgot to ask for her number at the party, so I couldn't even get an explanation from her. I just wanted to know if she was okay. I tried asking around to see if anyone knew her, but nobody did. Months went by, and I eventually was able to move on. I started college in the fall and my life was pretty normal. Then 1 month until New Year's Eve, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Amanda. She wanted to meet up with me and talk. I was so surprised, but agreed. We met up on campus. I had a range of emotions when I first saw her. I was excited to see her again, but also angry thinking about the way she left me to worry about her without an explanation. "Hey," she said. "Listen, I'm sorry about leaving you at the party the way I did. I just felt so guilty for what I did to you." "What do you mean? And why did you take so long to reach out to me? I was really worried about you for a long time afterwards," I said. "I'm sorry, but I couldn't think of a way to explain it that you would believe," she said. "Just tell me," I said. She paused. "You've had a curse placed on you." I immediately started laughing. "I'm sorry, but that's your explanation? Wow, you're right, I don't believe you." "I figured you wouldn't. I didn't either when I was first told." She said, "This curse, it only takes effect on New Year's Eve at midnight exactly. The person who carries the curse must kiss someone at exactly midnight on New Year's Eve or they will die," she said. At this point, I was more amused than anything. "Go on," I said. "Whoever kisses the cursed person at midnight has the curse passed on to them. The only way to get rid of it is to kiss someone else at exactly midnight on New Year's Eve," she said. "What if I decide not to go out? Is a random person going to show up at my house and kill me?" I said. "As long as you are inside your house at midnight, you are safe. I don't know why, but it's some sort of demon. It can't enter your house. It can only kill you if you're away from your house at midnight and you haven't kissed someone," she said. "A demon that shows up to kill you if you haven't kissed someone at midnight?" At this point, I was beginning to think Amanda was legitimately insane. "I know you think I'm crazy, but trust me on this. If you leave your house on New Year's Eve, you must kiss someone at midnight. Please, I don't want something to happen to you," she pleaded. I wanted to take the thing as a huge practical joke, but the look on Amanda's face was the same one as she had the night of the party. She looked terrified, and it scared the hell out of me. New Year's Eve night arrived, and Amanda's story was in the back of my mind. I wasn't going to leave my house anyways, because I didn't have any plans, but I was still a little freaked out. Nothing unusual was happening. I was watching New Year's Eve parties on TV when I decided to go to the kitchen to grab a snack. That's when I noticed something standing in my front yard staring at me. From far away, it looked like a girl. I figured it was just my imagination, and I went back upstairs. I came downstairs an hour later. She was still standing there in the same spot. At this point, I was completely freaked out. I was going to call the police when I realized what was really happening. Good one, Amanda, I thought, standing in my front yard on New Year's Eve to try and scare me. I headed to my front door and opened it. I started walking towards her. "Okay, you got me. I was freaked out. Now come inside, it's cold as hell out here." I was 10 feet from her when I stopped. From far, it looked like a girl, but up close, I could immediately tell this thing wasn't human. Where hands should have been, there were claws, and there was just darkness where a face should have been. Out of fear, I dropped my phone, and I went to pick it up, and it read 11:59, only 15 seconds to midnight. I immediately took off sprinting towards my house. I was almost to the door when I felt something grab me. Its claws on my leg felt like my soul was being ripped apart. I struggled to get inside. I could feel myself slipping away. I don't know if it was more adrenaline or fear, but I was able to get one last burst of energy and push my body past the door. I felt the thing let go of my leg. I immediately slammed the door shut. I started to scream out of complete shock and fear. The next day, I contacted Amanda and I told her I believed her. I don't blame her for putting the curse on me. You can't blame someone for not wanting to die. I just can't bring myself to put a curse on someone else. At least, not yet. So, I wait in my house on New Year's Eve. It's what I've done the past 4 years. The demon waits in my yard every New Year's, just staring, waiting for me to come outside. I know I'll eventually have to go out there on New Year's Eve and find someone to kiss. I now understand the pain Amanda felt having to put this burden on someone else. So if you see me at a New Year's Eve party and want to avoid me, I'll understand. But I apologize in advance to whomever I end up kissing. I'm sorry. I just don't want to die.